Boom. I'm Sushma Saha, and I use pretty much any and all pronouns. I'm most comfortable using she, they, and z, but also I'm happily use he as well. But really any pronouns. I've heard the term, what's it called, pronoun indifferent, but I don't like the idea of being indifferent about something. I like feeling a way about something, so I'm happy to use all pronouns. Well, I think it's interesting, right? Because again, there's this whole thing where Asian and South Asian people are kind of in this exception group where we are what's called the model minority. So we have different expectations on us in that the difference between, say, like Latino people and Black people is that like we're expected to succeed in society, right? We're seen as docile but like super intelligent and people who are going to be doctors, lawyers, engineers. So like those are those stereotypes that are placed upon us, but they're kind of like quote unquote positive ones, even though they're still stereotypes. Like we're expected to bring in wealth, we're expected to succeed. So while that is the exception, it is still, as an artist, it's definitely really hard because the thing that I am met with the most often, ever since I was a kid too, as somebody who was a singer and a performer and a dancer, people would always ask me like, oh, are you planning on going into that? Even when I was in like 5th grade, people were like, oh, are you planning on pursuing that when you get older? Like, won't your parents be upset because you're not going to be a doctor or a lawyer? Like that would always be the thing that people would ask me. And like, again, while that's like may be seen as like a positive thing, it was definitely very annoying because I loved the arts and I loved being an artist, and the idea that because of my race that I that was unforeseen, that was like that wasn't doable for me almost was so strange, because I'm like, can't anybody be an artist? Like, isn't that what art is? Like, art can be anything and done by anyone. So that was definitely hard. And the experience that I first thought of when you asked that question was I was auditioning for colleges my senior year of high school for musical theater programs. I ended up at Ithaca College, but there was one program that I auditioned for where I sang my songs, and the monitor just kind of kept looking at me so confused and like curious. And right after I sang, he went, "Thank you, yeah. So what are you?" And I was like, "Oh, what do you mean, sir?" And he was like, where are you from?" I was like, "Oh, well, I'm from Pennsylvania." He goes, No, like, where are you from? Like, where's your family from?" And I was like, "Oh, my family's Indian." He goes, "Oh, so you're Indian. Interesting. What's that like for you?" And I didn't know what to like say to that, because I was like, "Oh, do you mean like in general, or like as in the art?" Like, I didn't know how to respond as like an 18-year-old baby. I was like, I just didn't know what to say. And I was auditioning for this man too, so I wanted to make it into his program, so I wanted to say the right thing. I remember saying like, "Oh, like I'm an artist just like anybody else, just out here trying to do the thing." And he goes, yeah. It almost makes you wonder if the theater community is even ready for Indian people. And I didn't know what to say. I didn't, like, what do you say to that? And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I guess." And this man called me back not once, not twice, but 3 times for his program, and then proceeded to decline me. But I think he was just so unsure, but yet so intrigued by somebody like me auditioning for his program. And that, like, is kind of what defines my experience as a person of color in my world, that is like the industry and like the performing arts. So yeah, it's like either, today I am so fortunate because I got to be a part of this show 3 years ago when you interviewed me. That really opened up a lot of doors for me, and in the spaces that I wanted to be in, where I felt seen. So like, I feel very fortunate now where I feel accepted just the way that I am as a queer Indian American person and performer. But like, I can't imagine not having had that opportunity and being validated in the way that I was, and being a part of projects that maybe say would always ask me to change who I was, or would always be so unsure but intrigued about who I was, and then like never get any opportunities. But then at the same time, it's like I wouldn't want to be a part of those things anyway, because they wouldn't want me for who I was. you know? So I just feel so grateful to now be in a community of queer creators and people of color who are such amazing creators who want to collaborate with me and like want me just as I am. So it's changed a lot and I'm very happy. Yeah, I think it took a lot of searching for myself inwardly first. I think to kind of go back to what you were asking about, like, when did you transition to the word queer and like when it kind of became for myself. I think that because the end of my experience in high school, I remember I identified as bisexual. That's how I came out. And then I remember talking about my sexuality to people, and to this one person in particular, and they were like, that sounds more like pansexual to me, if we're thinking about it. And I was like, oh, well then I guess that I am pansexual. Like, it was kind of one of those things where like it was being defined by somebody else for the sake of everybody else to understand a part of my life that maybe even wasn't their business. It was so specific, you know? And so for a while I identified as pansexual, you know? And then coming out, you know, my sophomore year of college as like not cis was also a whole thing. And like having to figure out, I was constantly juggling the terms agender, genderqueer, gender fluid, gender questioning, like all of these terms that I kept interchanging, but then kind of feeling bad because all of them might have meant different things. So like I didn't want to use them incorrectly, so I kind of had to keep like picking what term was correct. And then it wasn't until I think maybe like my senior year of college, that was in 2019, that I was like, you know what, I like queer. That's what I like. And that's what I identify most with. And like, I think that was when, rather than me being like, oh, I'm pansexual and genderqueer, like having to do that, it kind of became more like I got to harness the magic of what I was by just saying that this is what I am and not thinking about it so much, that people started to be, I think, more drawn to like my magic rather than me being like, this is what I am because you asked this thing. It was just more like, oh, now we're all just mingling, we're all here, we're all living and existing amongst each other in our identities, and you don't owe me anything and I don't owe you anything. So that's kind of how it felt, I think. I feel very fortunate in that I haven't had like quote unquote like traumatizing experiences that like with my queerness, and I think it's because of all the work that my past fellow queer people have done, you know, to help me have the experience that I have, because they had to go through those struggles, therefore I didn't have to go through all of those struggles. Like, their work mattered, and it has shown with my experience. I think for me the hardest thing with my queerness is having to hide it from people. I am very, like, I don't want to say fortunate, but like I have this ability where people often think that I am cis, or people don't assume that I am queer. Oftentimes actually my queerness tends to surprise some people. I've met people where they're like, oh, like you read so queer to me, and then again it's like this social scalping that you were saying before, and like some people are like, wait, I didn't know you were queer. But I think again, like, while I love my family, some members of my family, my parents, my mom, because I don't believe my dad knows that I'm queer. Even though I tried to come out to him once, but I think he thought it was a joke because he laughed about it, and then he hasn't talked about it ever since. So I can't tell my dad, and I can't tell my grandparents, and I can't tell other people who are a part of my family, because some of them just wouldn't accept it. And again, I'm lucky that I have this skill where I'm able to say hide it, but I'm sad that I have to hide it, because again, it's a part of my magic, I think. I think it's a part of what makes me me. The fact that I have to hide this part of me makes me, it makes me sad, because I feel like they're missing out on a part of myself that I really love about myself. The most pressing issue, I think, is LGBTQIA plus youth. I think we have to save our babies. We have to. Because the fact that a lot of them don't feel safe because of their queerness is unacceptable. Like, for me, it's like, you know, as adults, we have so much more, obviously we're still oppressed, but we have so much more freedom as grown people above the age of 18 to, you know, I don't know, like stick up for ourselves more or like escape certain situations. But as babies, as children, like who don't have anywhere else to go, who are stuck because they're like minors, is unacceptable. Like, kids should feel safe no matter who they are, what they are, how they identify. So for me, I think like the fact that like that suicide rates are up so high for queer children makes me really upset. And I think that we need to do more about that in terms of like placing guidelines and rules and regulations to make sure that we keep them safe. So I do a lot of queer art. I do a lot of queer theater. So when I see kids, queer kids come to witness that art and come see our theater that is about queerness, that gives me a lot of hope. Because just seeing how happy they look and how seen that they feel gives me a lot of hope. And the fact that they're able to like harness the resources or do what they can or like network with other kids like from across the country or like from, you know, like, or across the world even, with people who they meet just to find community and then to like also witness stuff within their community that is about queerness and like queer magic, gives me so much hope. Because they shouldn't have to be, but they're so competent and so independent because they have to be sometimes. And while that's again like sad, but like seeing them all together at projects or like shows that I'm part of and seeing how happy they look and how fulfilled they feel, and like literally just hearing them say I felt so seen, or like so true bestie, or like, you know, all the things that they say gives me so much queer happiness and hope for them. I think my favorite thing about being me is that my love is unconditional. I love a lot of people. I love people who I don't know. And I think that's really special. I'm really working on saying good things about myself and like not getting embarrassed about it or like feeling like I'm being stuck up or self-absorbed. But I think it is important to recognize your strengths. And so I think if I really have to say something today, it is that my love is unconditional. Like I said, I love a lot of people. I love people who I don't know. And I'm always down to help somebody and love somebody if they need it on any given day. But the thing that I'm working on, because I used to give and give until I was empty, but now I'm working on loving myself so that I can have enough love to give around to everybody around me. And that's been super helpful. And it's helped me love better. And that's the one thing that makes me really proud to be me.